In our last journey, we stood in Asgard, the realm of the gods. Now we descend to the world below, Midgard, the realm of humanity. This is episode 2 of our 9 Realms series. Deep within the vast expanse of Norse cosmology stood Yggdrasil, the immense world tree whose roots and branches bound the 9 realms together. At its very center lay Midgard, the realm of humanity. Unlike the divine majesty of Asgard or the wild chaos of Jotunheim, Midgard was a balanced realm, neither fully divine nor purely mortal, but a place where the 2 worlds touched. The gods had shaped Midgard with care, crafting it as a safe haven for mankind, encircled by vast oceans and protected by colossal walls forged from the remains of the primordial giant Ymir. It was the realm most closely tied to Asgard. The shimmering Bifrost Bridge, guarded by Heimdall, formed a rare and sacred passage between the 2 worlds. In Norse thought, Midgard was not just a home for mortals. It was the stage upon which the greatest myths unfolded. Heroes would rise here, battles would be fought here, and in the end, Ragnarok itself would come crashing down upon this realm. Midgard, the realm of humanity, was unlike any other among the 9 realms. Where Asgard shone with divine majesty and Jotunheim raged with chaotic giants, Midgard was made for balance. It was the realm created for men and women, fragile beings, yet central to the fate of all existence. According to the myths, the gods shaped Midgard from the body of the primordial giant Ymir. His flesh became the land, his bones the mountains, his blood the seas, and his skull the sky. From his eyebrows, the gods formed the great walls that would surround Midgard, shielding mankind from the dangers of the outer realms. Within these boundaries, humanity found its home. Here, mortals hunted, farmed, and built their lives, watched over from above by the Aesir. The gods gave them order, language, and law, for without guidance mankind would falter. Yet Midgard was never a place of weakness. Though fragile compared to the gods, humanity was destined for courage, resilience, and greatness. From Midgard would rise heroes, men and women whose names would echo in sagas alongside Odin, Thor, and the gods themselves. Thus, Midgard stood as a reflection of both vulnerability and strength. A reminder that even in a cosmos filled with divine power, the mortal spirit mattered. According to Norse mythology, mankind did not simply appear by chance. The gods themselves shaped the first humans, breathing life into what was once lifeless wood. The story tells that Odin, along with his brothers Vili and Ve, found 2 pieces of driftwood lying on the shores of Midgard. From these simple logs, they created the first man and woman. Odin gave them breath and spirit. Vili granted them mind and movement. Ve gave them senses, speech, and form. Thus, Ask and Embla, the first humans, came into being. Ask, whose name meant ash tree, and Embla, often linked to the elm tree, were seen as the ancestors of all humankind. From them spread generations of men and women who would fill Midgard with life. The gods then gave humanity a home, laws to follow, and order to keep. Though mortal, fragile, and bound by time, humanity was a creation of the divine, a reflection of Yggdrasil's balance between gods, giants, and the natural world. For the Norse, the tale of Ask and Embla was not just a creation story, but a reminder. Humanity carried both weakness and divine gift, destined to play a role in the fate of the cosmos. When the gods created Midgard, they knew it could not stand unprotected. Surrounded by dangerous realms, the icy Niflheim, the fiery Muspelheim, and the wild lands of Jotunheim, humanity needed safety from the chaos beyond. The Shaping of Midgard began with the body of Ymir, the primordial giant. From his bones they built mountains, from his blood they made the seas, and from his skull they raised the sky. But his eyebrows held a special role. From them the gods fashioned an immense wall, encircling Midgard like a fortress. This wall became the first and greatest protection for humankind. Inside, the gods placed fertile lands, flowing rivers and forests rich with life. They balanced the realm carefully, not too harsh like Jotunheim, not too divine like Asgard, but a world where humanity could grow, learn, and survive. To connect Midgard with the gods, they left one path, the Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost. It was not meant for mortals, but as a symbol of the link between heaven and earth. Thus, Midgard was shaped as both a sanctuary and a battleground, safe from outside forces, yet destined to face trials that no wall could stop. Midgard was a realm of seasons and struggle, but also of craft and celebration. Unlike the timeless halls of the gods, the mortal world moved to the rhythm of day and night, planting and harvest, storm and thaw. Here, life was precious because it could be lost. Villages clustered along coasts and rivers, where longhouses stood shoulder to shoulder against the wind. Inside, the fire was a sacred center, warming children, drying nets and cloaks, and carrying stories up into the rafters. Each morning, doors opened to labor, men to sea or field, women to hearth and handiwork, elders to counsel and song. No task was small if it held the family together. Trade routes stitched communities into a living web. Boats carved wakes across cold fjords, sleds crossed frozen ground. Amber, iron, furs, and grain moved from hand to hand, along with news, oaths, and old rivalries. Hospitality was more than politeness, it was survival. A stranger at the door might be a messenger, a merchant, or the hero of tomorrow. The sacred lived beside the practical. Offerings of bread, ale, or carved wood were left at stones and trees where spirits were thought to dwell. Gods were honored at feasts. Ancestors were remembered with quiet cups, raised in the dim light of winter. The Norns' threads were invisible, but their pull was felt in every illness, every birth, every turn of fortune. War was not constant, yet its shadow shaped the world. Shields hung ready by the door. Boys learned to hold them long before they learned to shave. But courage meant more than iron. It meant keeping a promise when no one was watching, sharing food in a lean year, and returning from sea with enough fish for the old and the young. Songs, the skald's bright inheritance, bound memory to melody. They told of fishermen who braved black water, of mothers who stood unshaken in the face of winter, of travelers who met wonders in the forests and came home changed. Through these songs, ordinary lives became legend, and legend taught the next generation how to live. In Midgard, greatness wore humble clothes, a well-mended net, a fair judgment, a warm fire on a storm night. Such things were victories. The gods might decide the fate of worlds, but mortals decided the fate of each other. One kindness, one oath, one hard day's work at a time. And always, somewhere at the edge of hearing, the sea spoke, the forests listened, and the sky held its breath, waiting for the day when the stories of Midgard would rise to meet the stories of the gods. In Midgard, greatness was not a gift from the gods. It was something forged in frost, sea spray, and iron. Heroes here were not immortal. They bled, they failed, they paid for their choices. And because their lives were brief, fame, the echo of a name, became a kind of immortality. They sang first of Sigurd, the dragon slayer. A boy raised among smiths and secrets, he took up Gram, a blade reforged from shattered steel. On a blackened field he met Fafnir, whose greed had burned him into a dragon. Sigurd struck through scale and smoke. Dragon blood steamed on the ground. It's said the blood opened his ears to the speech of birds, who warned him that gold can twist a man's fate. Even victory carried a shadow. Treasure that glitters is treasure that curses. They told of Ragnar Lodbrok, hairy breeches, who faced a coiled serpent to win his bride. Tarred and fur-wrapped against the venom, Ragnar climbed the stakes set around the beast, spear in hand, and struck it down. Later he rode storms, broke kings and fathered sons who would shake coasts and courts alike. Ragnar's saga was not a single triumph, but a tide, sometimes rising, often breaking, teaching that boldness opens doors fate would keep shut. They whispered the midnight courage of Hervor, who called to her dead father on a windswept Barrow Isle. When the grave mound flamed and the dead answered, she did not run. From the ash she drew Tyrfing, a sword bright as dawn and cursed as winter hunger. Hervor's defiance won her a blade and a doom. Her tale is a lantern for Midgard, light to walk by, and a warning not to stare too long into the glow. On winter nights they spoke of Grettir the Strong, who wrestled the Draugr in a farmhouse choked with fear. They crashed across benches and beams until Grettir broke the monster, but not the monster's curse. From then on, darkness hunted him. Strength alone, Midgard learned, is a shield with cracks. Not all heroes led with steel. There was Egil Skallagrimsson, a storm of a man whose sword hand was matched by a skald's tongue. He carved runes to heal a failing girl and sang the head ransom before a king who meant to kill him. Verses like chains, holding death at bay. Egil's life cut 2 lessons into Midgard's oak. Words can bind as tightly as iron, and a poem can be a weapon. Between these lifetimes lay the fabric of honor. A gift asked for a gift, an oath demanded an oath. Hospitality could save a winter, treachery could cost a lineage. At the Thing, men stood beneath open sky while the law speaker recited the bones of order, who owed what, who paid when, and how blood could be cooled by Vorgild rather than warmed by more blood. In such customs, the mortal world kept its shape. And always the skalds wove names into memory, fishers who steered through iron seas, mothers who guarded fire through a night of snow, wanderers who returned with maps written in scars. These were Midgard's legends, made of hunger and hope, of tools turned into trophies. Some who fell in battle were chosen by the Valkyries, carried to Valhalla to feast and train for the last day. The rest remained in the songs of their kin, which is another kind of afterlife. For Midgard, heroism was not perfection, it was persistence, to stand again, and to keep one's word when no one is watching. And when the wind went quiet and the aurora moved like slow fire, people remembered, even the gods would face their ending, and mortals would stand in that storm with them. Soon the sky itself would crack, the sea would climb, and Midgard would learn what its courage was for. The destiny of Midgard was bound to Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. No wall, no weapon, no hero could prevent what the prophecies foretold. When the fated time arrived, Midgard would tremble. The seas would rise as Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent, uncoiled from the depths, thrashing its massive body against the shores. Tidal waves would drown villages, sweeping ships and men into the abyss. The sky would split as Surt, the fire giant, marched from Muspelheim with a sword brighter than the sun. Flames would spread across the land, forests would burn, and the heavens themselves would crack. In the final battle, Thor would face Jörmungandr in a clash of thunder and poison. The thunder god would slay the serpent, but after taking 9 steps, he too would fall, poisoned by its venom. Odin would fall to Fenrir, and the gods' defenses would collapse. For Midgard, it was the end. The oceans would swallow the earth, fire would consume what remained, and the world of men would vanish into shadow. Yet, the myths carried a glimmer of hope. They spoke of a new earth rising from the sea, green and fertile. 2 humans, Leif and Lifthrasir, hidden deep in the forest of Hodmimisholt, would survive. From them, humanity would begin again. Midgard would fall, but life, fragile yet enduring, would return. The mortal realm, once destroyed, would one day live anew beneath a reborn sun.